Right. Hello everyone and welcome to this last piece of the Great Zimbabwe tour. If you've been following this series, we actually had 2 episodes prior. The tour part 1, tour part 2, and this is the tour part 3 of 3, which is going to be the last one. At this moment in time, we're actually going to be taking a tour across the other side of the ruins. For part 2 and part 1, we've been pretty much on the left side on that very visible mountain. That's where we've been, but right now we're going through and see other monumental structures and artifacts thereof that has been constructed here by the ancient people of the Zimbabwe nationality. So as you can see here, this place is full of solid wall structures constructed by mere stones, like dry walls. As I've been saying all over, there is no even mortar, there is no reinforcement, there is no bar, there is no iron, there is nothing. It's just stone on top of another. Where they found these stones or how they structured them to be that properly sitting on top of another remains an unanswerable question to me. Seen on the aerial views, you can pretty much see a number of ruins just scattered around this whole area, resembling the area or the place where the empire or the Mutapa Empire was actually residing, or they were actually conducting their day-to-day activities and duties. So off the mountain, on top of the mountain, we saw another erection of walls and buildings that were actually on top of the mountain. And on this view here, we can actually pretty much see the structures that are on the ground level. Of course, it's a bit of a hill, but it's pretty much on the ground level. What we're seeing here is pretty much the remains of the ruins. Pretty much that's where the name ruins came from, really, because it means like there was something, but that something right now is actually a matter of remains, which is actually in a ruined state. That's pretty much what that Great Zimbabwe Ruins pretty much means here. And if you want to be flamboyant or a bit modern, you can actually call it the Great Zimbabwe Monuments. I think that's a bit more decent. So as you can see here, a number of stones just laying around. Some of you might be wondering, okay, what was the structure here? Were these people just that really crazy and just putting stone on top of another without any meaningful structure or any meaningful kind of a building here? What were they doing exactly? However, as we said earlier, this is actually pretty much the ruins, which is actually just the remaining of the buildings thereof. History actually says it that back in the time, the European colonialists actually came through onto this very area here, excavating for gold, and in the process thereof, they actually had a pretty much damage to the ruins here, and some of the erectional structures were actually demolished, destroyed, and some left in a state or position that will make them last not any longer in the time. This actually happened some time ago, but the effects are actually visible right now. As we all know, these ruins are pretty much more than 600 or 700 years old, and by no way they can remain intact or in a proper position at this moment in time, due to weather, natural degradation, the weathering, and ever-changing weather conditions thereof. Another interesting fact, which is probably a bit on a sad note, is that also history has it recorded that pretty much just a few years ago, these ruins suffered another nudge or another blow from the European visitors thereof, if we can call them that way. So what happened here is like these European allies, they actually came through and went onto these monuments with the intention really of destroying the ruins. This is not me saying it, it's actually out there on the public domain. You can actually do your researches and read around. The reason or the motive behind the destruction of these ruins was actually pretty much silly, really. You agree with me if you hear that. The only reason why they actually wanted to destroy this, of which I think they actually did a bit of damage already, is that they said, or they believed, that there is no black African who could actually erect this kind of walls without the assistance of a European or Americans or a white man's hand, in a way. So in other words, you're actually in a more of a disbelief that there's no way a black person can actually erect this structure, this solid structure here. How did they get the engineering skills? How did they know that they have to do this and that for this structure to stand? How is it possible that these guys, remember the colonialists when they came to Africa? At this moment in time, us as the freeborn generation, we can actually say they pretty much taught us almost everything that we know right now, which might be correct in a way. And by this notion of them being entitled to the knowledge transferred downstreaming to the Africans, they were also entitled to the fact that no way an African child or an African person can actually erect this wall here without the intervention of an white man. So in their thesis, or in their belief, or their research maybe, they actually believed there was actually a white man's hand somewhere, somehow. However, the funny thing is that they couldn't prove it. There was no proof for them to do that, or to actually claim that, because back then in those years, in the 1450s, 1300s, it was the natives who were actually staying in these areas here. That's actually pre-colonial era, because the colonial era came, I think it was way later in the 1890s, right? But back then it was only the natives here, the real Africans. So the Europeans and the Chinese, they were actually just coming through here onto this very place for trading with the locals, where they were doing exchange of gold, minerals, diamonds, and many other things. In exchange of what? That also I'm not pretty much sure as to what exactly were they bringing, but I would like to assume they were bringing things like maybe the modern stuff. I'm not sure about clothing, but probably they were also bringing clothing, or the eats, the food and stuff. And by so doing, if you like, that's when you can say that's when our ancestors got to lose the traction and really sold out to the highest bidder, if you want to say. But let's not say sell out, because that was really a forced evacuation, where our ancestors were actually forced out of it, and through that kind of a friendship, which we call trade, they were actually ambushed, and then their territory was taken over, their belongings were taken over, their gold, diamonds were actually looted, and as if that's not enough, some of them were actually shipped all the way back to Europe for slave trade, which is actually a very, very disturbing, sad history if you want to go through to that. So yeah, that's how bad it is. So it's like there was a bit of backstabbing happening here. You welcome visitors in the name of investors in a current state of affairs, and then little do you know that they're actually holding a very big sharp knife or sword at the back just to stab you should you get a bit of relaxed in their presence. So as silly as it might sound, right? As I said, I challenge you out there to go onto the history archives and get it on your own. As silly as it might sound, this was the actual very reason why these European envoys, who came actually in the skin of tourists or visitors, did a bit of some damage to these ruins. It was pretty much out of jealousy. So, this happened recently. It's not something that happened in the 80s. It actually happened right now in the 21st century. So there was a bit of destruction, and they were bringing down the walls for no reason. I mean, they had a reason, of which the reason of there was to say this thing was not constructed by blacks. It was constructed by the whites somehow, but they did not have a proof of showing it out there. So it was pretty much out of jealousy. So they knocked the walls down and pretty much did a bit of damage before the security forces actually intervened, and the national eye also came into rescue, because this is actually a UNESCO recognized World Heritage Site. Anyways, so this is the big crow, and here I'm actually just inside and I'm taking you through the architectural lineup of the stones and artifacts thereof. As you can see here, I was trying to measure out with my selfie stick, and this distance here was pretty much less than a meter, if I may say. Very narrow, very narrow, such that if you are a bit gifted in the flesh size, you might actually have issues passing through this wall. It's a very narrow cut passage here. I'm not sure what was it being used for, but it looks very interesting, and if you have time, I would really encourage you to go down through the books and actually get to know more about this amazing structure here. What was it used for, and what was happening there. As we go down, we come to another monumental structure here, which looks like a conical tower, which forms the iconic symbol on the Zimbabwean dollar back then. This is exactly the picture. This is where it was taken from. This conical tower here was also erected or built by stones, one stone on top of another, again without any means of backup, just drywall building and construction here. That's amazing, isn't it? Very dry and looks a bit rusty, coated up with some bushy kind of stuff, which shows that this is pretty much very old. As you can see from the aerial view, this is the entire crow, and you can see here that the ruins, they actually looks like they've been a bit higher. I mean, the structures inside, but now they're actually pretty much lower because of natural degradation and probably physical damage from visitors and. As you can see, just like what we saw in the mountain area, these stones are just stacked on top of another without any reinforcement in here, without any mortar, without any adhesive products. It's just dry wall built by stone on top of another. So this was pretty much like a big crop. I'm not sure what was happening in here. Unfortunately, I didn't have enough time to go through the tour guides for them to take me through the entire history of what was happening, where and how, with who. But through my own assumptions, I can literally see that probably, again, this looks like another huge palace, probably where the chief or the king used to dwell and conduct their business or day-to-day duties. These walls are very thick, people. Very thick. Very thick. I wonder what they were having in the mind when they were actually making these walls, because they are very thick. If it was for protection, they were really delivering the much needed protection. I'll leave you to have a view of the aerial views here and probably get to enjoy more of the views of the crow setup and the buildings, I mean the structures around. Back then there was no gunpowder and there was no rockets. I mean, as far as the African wars and fights are concerned, it was more of a blow to blow, making use of the arrows, bows and swords. So if one is actually taking refuge into this, there are very low chances that an arrow shot from a distance will actually get straight onto their head. We'll be coming across people now and again because this place is always having a lot of visitors coming through, school kids, as you've seen there, coming here to study history, and just visitors from other places, some as far as Europe, the very same Europe, that was actually destroying this structure in a disbelief that no black person can actually make this kind of engineering. So yeah, there's quite a lot of Europeans that come through here. I'm sure you actually saw even some on my previous videos, and even here in this video I think you might actually be able to see some. So it's always busy. Look at that. I'm not sure what kind of wood is that, but it looks pretty strong, and for how many years it's been there I'm not even sure. This is just majestic, and the wood is untreated. There's no whatever kind of treatment that has been put on it, but it's still there supporting that whole mass of wall. So in this one here, I actually took a tour around the structure so that you can actually even get to see even more of this majestic construction here. Very massive drywall. Going up, I think it really spans to around 3 meters, if not 4, right now. And back then, when it was still virgin and before any distractions or before any of the rocks fell off, I'm not sure to what extent it was going up high. Probably it was even going higher than that. I wonder what the name of these stones is. I wonder what the name of these stones are. Those who studied geology or whatever it is, please help me in the comment section by actually telling us what's the name of these stones, because they look like they're really a known type, and that is very durable and strong, because as you can see here, we're talking about something that has been standing for more than 600 years. Now let's take a view from a distance and actually get to see the entire place in one smaller region. Right, on the far right there, this area is between the crow setup and that mountain we've been through in the previous episodes. There's actually another village kind of a setup. As you can see, there's those many huts there and another kind of a crow setup. I'm sure there's something that was happening as well in there. And as you can see, the huts there, for now no one stays in those huts, but for history and learning purposes, this is pretty much where the pupils and students and other foreign visitors come through to be schooled about the Shona culture and the culture of pretty much the Zimbabwean people, as it resembles pretty much the village or the setup, or how people were staying in those huts, how were they conducting their businesses, their duties every day, sweeping around, thatching their huts, nursing children, going to head cattle, taking care of everything. Actually, pretty much a home setup, as you can see. So people, we actually have reached the conclusion of the Great Zimbabwe Ruins tour. It was such a great thing. So yeah, briefly in conclusion, all I can say is that this Great Zimbabwe Ruins is actually an old city where the old Zimbabweans used actually to stay. The political elites, the leaders, the rulership, they used actually to dwell here. You can see from the setup of the housings. I think you can see the huts there. I'm not sure if you can see them, the little huts, and another big rounded kind of a crow there, which has been built up there, right? So this was pretty much a city where the Zimbabweans used to actually trade with the Portuguese, the Chinese, and all the Europeans.
And also this was more like their place of refuge. As a city, they actually had to make sure that it's safe from the enemies. They can't really easily be reached by the enemy. Even attacks, they cannot be easily attacked. Also spotting, I tell you, if you're from this spot, you can easily spot whoever the enemy is coming. I mean, just look at it down there, right? You can easily, there are 10 horses coming down there, or there's a cart coming down there, and then you can actually easily react or prepare your armory or your army or your armor bearers for some action. So this was actually a strategically placed position, you know, for the rulership here of the ancient people who used to stay here and yeah, doing their trade of gold, minerals, and a whole lot of things. It's actually a very beautiful place. Looking at it, I'm sure the camera doesn't do justice, but if you can get time, I'll really encourage you to come through and get to witness this and get to see it for your own, and get to see it and actually enjoy the caves here and all these narrow twists and bends, and get to see how the stone were laid, one stone on top of another, without any assistance of mortar, without cement, without even any, I don't think they even had cranes here. I think this was just pretty much natural. I mean, manual and extremely manual, you know. So history has it that this place was actually the construction started in their 13th century, 14th century, somewhere there, and it actually took about 300 years to completely complete this city, this ancient city. And then it was later on abandoned. I think history again says due to some lack of trade thereof, and then the Nyatsimbam Totas, they even migrated all the way down there and went to other places. And also the Roji people, I think those are the popular kind of empires that actually used to dwell around here, you know. So yeah, there were a whole lot of clans here, and I can literally take myself, try to flash back and actually see how these people were actually using to live in here. Down there I can literally see head of cattle, all those people wearing those kind of what do you call it, back then there was no trousers, there was no t-shirts like this ones I'm wearing, so I can literally see them like half naked, but they were not naked in their own eyes, and doing their iron sharpening here, stone making, and doing their traditional medicinal healings there, performing their ruling somewhere. Especially this place here, when I look at it, I feel like it's actually probably one of the chiefs the palace where they actually used to make some rulings or give punishments to those who had offended the villagers or other community or dweller or something, because it looks like an open ground, an open space here. Of course now it looks pretty much smooth for tourists who come here stepping around, also because of its open-ended view here all the way to the eastern side here of the country. You can easily see nicely here and have all the views and everything. Look at those balancing rocks, look at everything. So I mean, I can take the whole night here trying to explain the majestic views here and how this place is particularly nice and beautiful. Yeah, I can't get enough of it, you know. I really can't get enough of it. Where I'm standing here is pretty much at the edge. I just want to take you through. As you can see there, it's my shoe there. I'm pretty much at the edge here, enjoying the views. I think going down there is pretty much about 15 meters or somewhere there, and my feet is literally about 2 centimeters away from there. I left my bike all the way down there, so for now I think I'm gonna cut off the recording because I think we're actually done with the tour. So now I'm gonna get down the mountains here and we're gonna start taking the mountain. Anyway people, so